Welcome, everyone. Good evening, and it's great to have you here. It's Bright from Bwave ICT once again, and today we are going to be talking about the shell variables. We've been dealing with the shell, and so far we've known just the few basic commands: how to list files, how to create directories, how to change directory, how to remove folders. Basically, everything you can do with your normal computers is what we've been doing so far in the shell for all our classes, where we did shell navigation and shell basic. But are there more things we can do? Definitely, a whole lot more we can do with the shell. The shell is very powerful, and it's like it's an operating system. It can do a whole lot more than you can even imagine. We'll be looking at some of those things you can do with the shell. And in just 2 days from now, which is less than 2 days from now, if you look at it correctly, we would be going into a programming language called C. In today's class, I'm not going to talk about C, but I'm going to show you some comparisons between shell and C. I'm going to let you decide for yourself if shell is easier or not. I'm sure at this point so far, many of us will agree that the shell is becoming difficult, right? That the shell is really becoming difficult and complex. But contrary to that, it's actually very easy. And so we'll try to practicalize most of the things you've been doing so far today. So with this preamble, let's just get started. And we're going to do all of our practice here on Ubuntu. We'll try to make this as interactive as possible. So feel free to ask questions. You could use the call message to ask most of the questions. So if it's something really important, you can kindly excuse me and ask your questions. Before we get started, the focus is on shell variables. So I want to ask, so far, how would you define a shell variable? Answers are welcome. How would you define a shell variable? Because that's the beginning of this whole project. Shell variable. So how are you going to define it? Okay, you can unmute and answer. You can also use the call message. Very welcome. Even if it's not correct, of course, that's the whole essence of learning. So how do you define what do we mean by shell variable? We have an answer here that says var20. Fine, you are actually creating and assigning a value to a variable with that. But what's the whole idea of the shell variable? All right, let's see it together now. A variable, or a var for short, as a storage location with a specific name. So it's just a storage, it's a location where you store something, and that location, you're going to give it a specific name. Does that make sense? For example, let's say now let's create a directory that would use for these two examples called variables. All right, so I want to cd into variables, and with our definition of a variable now, how does that connect with whatever I'm going to do here? Now, we just said a variable is a storage location with a specific name. Okay, so a specific name, and that name is going to store something. So what could be a name here? A name could just be, what could be our name? Maybe name. And then this name is going to store something. So this name is going to be storing, maybe this name would store a value like Bwave. So if we assign Bwave to this name, that's a variable. That's the whole basics of a variable. Quite simple, right? So the variable is the name. The value that you assign to the variable is actually what makes it count. So this is a name. This basically is a variable. But when we assign value to this variable, it's actually what makes it a variable in quotes now. Until we assign a value to it, it's not a variable yet. So let's go ahead and try to assign a variable now. A value to our variable. Now, variables have laws that govern them. If you are someone who have been playing around with code for a while now, maybe before coming to ALX, the word variable will not look so strange to you. And just like in most programming language, shell variables actually follow the same principle. Slightly different, but almost the same. So in everywhere you hear variable, in 2 days time, we're going to be starting C. And you are going to hear variable a whole lot. It's still the same principle. It's a name that stores some kind of value. Now, what's the law that governs a variable? The first law that governs a variable is that you do not store a variable with small letters. It's called lowercase. When you hear lowercase, it simply means small letters. So lowercase, if I type name here in small letters, this is lowercase. If I on my caps lock and write this is uppercase. It's just the law that governs it. And so we store it with the capital letter or the uppercase. We'll call this variable name, or let's just call it food, right? So it's not confusing. Our variable name would be food. Now, what value would this variable store? How do we assign it? So we could do something like space equal to, and then maybe in here we type rice. And we've assigned a value to a variable. Is this correct? What do you think? You don't have to be correct with what you think. It's just what you think. Do you think I've successfully created and assigned value to my variables? Seems like we have 1 or 2 answers there. Yeah, Mr. Chinedum saying no, that's not correct. Any other person use the call message? Do you think this is correct? A variable called food, and then we assign a value called rice to it. Is this correct? Because we say variable is just a name and we assign values. Got another person who said no, and you're absolutely correct if you say no, this is not correct. Now let's change it now and do something like this. So is this correct? What do you think? We just have food now and rice. Is this correct? We have another answer. No, no, thank you. Yes, but not best practice. It's partially correct and no. Thank you so much for all these answers. There's one that really caught my attention. Yes, but not best practice. Exactly the point. The food should be in caps. Exactly the point. So technically, this is correct. But if you are to have 100 marks, you would probably get 70 and lose the rest 30 because it's not in caps here. The variable name has to be in uppercase. So in case you were wondering, what's the difference between why this is not correct and the other is correct? Well, the difference is that assigning these variables, you do not put space in between. That's the difference. So this is the right way to assign a variable. Watch what will happen when I press enter now on my keyboard and try to see if you can spot out the problem. No problems at all. But let me go ahead to undo this now and do something called rice. And let's see, you can see it's telling me command not found. So you can see this just stored as a variable. Why this other one not found? So definitely you've actually seen a clear difference now. If you do something wrong at every given time, the system will definitely yell at you. Let's go ahead now and do some nice things with our variables. So I'm going to create a file called test1 with vi, and we are now going to write a variable there and store it. But we'll be doing this with shell scripting. So basically, the next set of commands I'll write would be familiar to you. And why do we always write this first command here? Like, why? This hash exclamation mark slash bin slash bash. What's this, and why do we even do this? Yes, Mr. Chika. Tell us.
To
Okay.
my understanding,
Please.
that is a script. For you to write any script, that syntax must first write that syntax. You're writing a script.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer. It's something called a shebang, and basically, what's this is just you could go ahead to write scripts without using this, and when you execute it, it would work, but not good practice, first of all. And then second, this tells the whole shell script that it should execute your next set of commands with bash. So bash is like the command mode it should use to execute your next set of lines should be with bash. Now, what we are writing is actually, we are using the Linux system, the Ubuntu system here, and it has different set of bash is something that we are using to execute our commands. So to tell Linux that what I'm using to execute the next set of commands should be bash, that's why we write this script. Basically, this hash here, if you're used to a programming language called Python, and even here on the terminal, wherever you have hash on your screen, it means a comment. It means it's something it would ignore when executing it. So if I have hash higher, it should ignore it if I decide to execute this, because it's a comment actually. So this is a comment. It ignores it. That's why you don't see bin bash printed out if you go ahead to execute and run this script. However, it does its job because it reads this line and treats this your next set of command as being executed by bash. But in reality, it will not display or act on this information, except that it's going to treat this command as being executed by bash. That's why we have bin bash there. And so let's go now to our next line, where we did store our variable food, and in here we had rice as our variable, right? That was what we did last time. So let's go ahead to save this now and see how we can work with it. I'm going to save with vi, save and quit. When we list out what we have test1. So how do I go about to execute my script? How do I go about to execute this script? The convention to do it is to put a dot here, slash, and the name of the script. So the name of my script is text1. So I'm going to put a dot slash and then test1 there. If I press enter, this is going to execute. But I want to bring things that you can relate with, that you've been doing for most of the project so far. And let's see why. So already we've seen why we have the bin bash. and you've seen about the variables, our best practice, what would work, what wouldn't work. Now, let's see our next thing now. Watch what will happen when I try to execute this script. So it's telling me that a permission is denied, and you can see bash here running our scripts, and bash is giving us an error that the file text1 that we are trying to execute, we cannot access it. We don't have the permission to execute that file. So what do? We have this error now. How do we fix it? What's something that you've been doing anytime you create a file so far, that if you don't do it, even after getting your answer correctly, checker is going to mark you wrong? Yes, we have Chikaye.
Yes, you can use the change mode command. That is the chmod u plus x, then the file name to make the file executable.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that. You're correct. So to get the permission, we are going to use the chmod u plus x and then the file name. But we could have numerous files here. This test one, we could go all at this folder may have up to 20 test files. Test 2, test 3, test 4. To keep writing chmod u plus s, test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4 could be really, really long and stressful. So we can go ahead to do something like this. chmod u plus x and then a star. This asterisk here would execute everything you've created so far in that folder. So when I list out what I have, you can see test 1 is now executable. Now let's try to run this script again. We have our scripts run test 1, but apparently nothing displayed. So what could be our problem? What did we do wrong? I see from Chinedum, I can see something there. She said echo correctly. You're very correct with that. So let me go to my VI now in my test 1, and probably in the next place, I want to echo something. You know, when you echo, you just say something. I've declared my global variable here. I've declared my local variable here, which contains rice as the value and food. For me to use it, I have to kind of call it. I have to say I want to use this variable. So I can say my fave food is, and what next? I'm going to use this $sign and then call the name of my variable. Now, in doing this, I'm going to be able to access my variable or see the information inside my variable here. So my fave food is $sign. If I just go ahead to write my fave food is food, let's see what happens when I try to execute this. It says my fave food is food. So it's very important that I use the $sign. The $sign helps you to access whatever you have there in your variable. So this $sign treats your next set of words that follows it as being important. So it's, in our case, as variables. So let's go ahead to run this again. Oh, we get something that says unexpected end of file. Now we have another problem on our hands. So let's go ahead and see. We forgot to close our quotation. So let's run it again. And we see now my fave food is rice. So just again, you can see my fave food is rice. Very correct. Now, this is just the the simplest part of variables. But you could be wondering, why should I create a variable, store something inside, only to call it? Why did I not just go and write my fave food is rice? Why must I put it in a variable and all of that? We'll look at why variables are important and some cool things we can do with them as we move on. But so far, do you have any questions from assigning a variable, assigning value to a variable, or declaring a variable, or even calling or using our variables? Any questions before we move on to the next thing? Mr. Kelvin says, what did you say was the last problem? Apparently, we missed our ending quotation. And so it gave us that at the end of our file, we are missing something. Almost self-explanatory. At the end of your file, you were missing something. So we went to the end of our file and we saw what we were missing. Any other questions from what we've just done? Yeah, Mr. Kelvin, I just answered the question. You still didn't see it. All right, it seems like we have no further questions. Everything was clear. So let's go ahead to see how we can access our variables more, or use our variable. In this case, we are going to look at another example. So let's go ahead to create something called, or another file called a test2. And in here, I'm now going to write something like sports. And this would be equal to baskets. Right? Now let's see how I can use this. Down, I'm going to echo something and say my fave sports is ball. So I want to write these baskets now. Maybe you have something like fill in the blank spaces, something like that. And you have a set of options like basketball, football, volleyball given to you. How do you access your favorite sports? You can use something called a variable to fill in here. So what we want to do is to make sure that immediately after we write our dynamic value here, which is stored in our variable, we have the ball. We don't have any spaces in between it. That's what we want to make sure that we do now. So how do we do that? We use something called a curly braces. It's a name you would hear, especially as we gradually progress into C. So we use something called a curly braces, and before that curly braces, we put this dollar sign as usual. Now in the curly braces, we are going to now write sports all in capital letters, because that's what we are trying to access here. So when we run this, you can already guess what we would have. Now, when we run this, you can already tell what we would have. So let's go ahead and run it. Of course, if we try to run this without making our files executable, we are always going to have a problem. So I'm using my arrow up key rather than type it out everything word for word. I'm using the arrow up key and arrow down to access commands I've typed before here. So I've made everything executable once again, and now I can run this now, test2. And it says bash no such file or directory. Interesting. So what do we have here? Text. So it was supposed to be tests, and I have text. Apparently, there's no such file called text. So these are common issues you face even while doing your tasks on ALX. These common problems that are really easy to solve. Once you just look at your error, take a good look at it and try to see what you did last and retrace your steps. Now let's run this. And it says my favorite sport is basketball. You see that there's no difference between the basket and the ball. Whereas if we should check the info we have in our VI here, we have this dollar sign, then we have our curly braces, and then we have sports inside before the ball. But apparently there was no difference between our basket and ball immediately we exited, as you can see. So this is it about assigning variables and doing this little basic stuff about variables. Let's see, it's like I've got a new question. One that says, must we use a text editor to assign a variable? Obviously not. So we can use echo, right? We could use the shell, but it doesn't make sense. We want to use the tools that we're given to sort our problems. So we want to use the right tools for the right problems. So if I'm going to write something, why not I use something that was designed to help me write? Like Emacs or VI or Neo or whatever. That's why I'm just using them. If not, anything that helps you write and the system can understand it, it's okay, it's fine. I hope that answered the question. Now, so far from what we've done, the variables we've done now, it's some of the task questions may seem clear. For example, there was a question in task 6 one time, and someone did ask the question on one of the groups I'm in. And the question was like, what was the question of task 6 again? To create a variable, right, and assign it a value. That was the question, I remember. To create a variable and assign a value. And now, so that's pretty much simple. Like to create a variable and assign it a value could be a very, very, very simple question. I can't find out that question again. But then there was another task. So let's say task 10. So let's see how what we've learned so far can help us do something like task 10 if you're in your project. So if you're with your system now, you can open to your ALX task 10 and let's see how we can answer that question. So if you're to write a script that displays the result of a variable to the power of another variable, how might you solve these tasks? Without looking at anywhere, without looking for any clues, from what we've just talked about variables so far. So maybe you may be thinking, why not we create another file called text3? And that's exactly what we will do. And we're asked to create something. Meanwhile, in our last example, I wanted to show you something I thought someone would ask. So if you notice, you can see I didn't put my bin bash here up, and it still worked out fine, right? It still worked out very, very fine. So there was a reason why. And I deliberately made a mistake here now. So it's not because of the bin bash. So, but let me put my bin bash up as part of good practice. We have tests 3 now. So I can use VI tests 3. And okay, open this. Now, as usual, our first line should be bin bash. If you make any mistakes with the writing of these things, you may get an error. For example, if you don't put this slash here, you may just encounter an error while trying to execute this code. So you want to make sure you put the right message at the right time. Once again, okay, someone is joining us. Now, remember, we're trying to print out something that displays the results raised to power 2 of another number. So how do we do that? Let's say you have two variables now. And what can we call our first variable? We can call it first. And then what value should we give to it? I need suggestions. What value should we assign? We want to display the result of a number raised to another one. So what variables can I store inside our first? Okay, 5. So okay, someone said 3 and I saw 5. So I'm going to store first as 5 and then second as 3. And fine. So before we go ahead, let's check 5 raised to the power of 3. Okay, we got 8, like 5 power of 3. Let's see. So let's see what our answer would be. Why is Google not giving us a direct answer here? Giving us different functions we can use to get the power of. But what is 5 power 3? Let's just see if Google gives us a direct answer. So yes, it gives us a direct answer. Apparently, you can just see my problem now. The first Google search and the second. Thank you, by the way. You were very correct. The first Google search and the second, you could see the difference. The first one, I just did 5 power 3, thinking Google will understand what I'm saying. And it did not give me the direct answer. But the second time I did it correctly by saying what is 5 raised to the power of 3, you can see the answer comes out direct. It's a lesson. If you want to use Google, you must know how to search for what you want very well so that you get the correct answer. So we have 125 here. 5 times itself 3 times. So we have 125. Now let's go to our shell. And at this time, we want to echo or display the results of 5 power 3 is. So how do we go ahead to do this? Remember what I just did with the brackets and curly braces. So you could use the curly braces and pretty much say first times. Now, we are not just going to do times because we are not looking for just the. We are not doing 5 times 3. We're looking for raised to the power of. So I can do first asterisk twice second. So one thing you really want to know is that these asterisks here could mean different things. You just saw how we used it in the terminal now to execute all the commands. In this case, it's used as a multiplication or raised to power symbol. And moving on, in other programming languages, it's almost the same thing. The same command, different usage. So let's see, this should work. But as always, the best way to know if it would work is to check it out. So first make this executable, then go ahead to test 3. It says the result of 5 power 3 is 125. Exactly the same result Google gave us. Now we are using our shell to do basic maths calculation. Fine, right? So you could just go ahead to play around with this. For example, try to get the not far off now, but let's say try to get the times, the multiplication. And what we get now, the result of 5 power 3 is 15. Of course, I should change this to multiply by 3 is 15. So just in case you want to use your calculator next time, why not use the shell? Yes, use Ubuntu. It's for developers actually. You can see the whole code you have to do to write out this, but I think it's kind of cool than just going about doing it the other way. So apparently some kind of violence have caught up with me, and this system they whine me. So I've settled its issue and we're cool. Plugged in now. I had no idea honestly that my system battery was going down. All right. Now, I'm sure if you've not known this before, this should be like some kind of cool things you can do. So by using the shell variables in it now, I'm trying to bring out some of the little things you did in the task plus general explanations to see how you can bring this shell closer to you, closer to your home, closer to yourself here. That it doesn't look diggy or vague. It doesn't look like something that does not make any reasonable sense. It does a whole lot. Let's move over to other examples now. There are still a couple of things we can do with shell. But before we go to those couple of things we can do with the shell, and if you have questions, please ask. Once again, we try to make this as interactive as we can so that no one is left behind. Anyone who has questions at all can ask. Even if you don't understand everything we've been saying from the starting, ask. That's the whole purpose of learning. Hello, Chika.
Yes, my question is about this combining commands with pipe. I really don't understand, especially the optional task. It has a lot of combination of commands. That it's confusing. You can shed more light on that, please.
Okay, those plenty advanced tasks. Since I do not like to. All right, let's see if we can speak a little. If we can speak a little about them. Hello, Mr. Or is that Miss or Missy? Akuyu.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome. Display the result. Thanks. Can you hear me? Can I go?
Yes, you can. You want to do what?
Okay, I want to know how we can display the result of a command in echo. Like I want to display the result of ls, for example, remove something. I don't know a command, but how can I display? How can I use it like variable? I don't know. Did you get me?
Can you come again?
Okay. I want to know how can I display the result of a command?
Yeah. The result of a command. Like give an example.
Yes, a command.
Give an example.
Like to display. Okay. To display a variable, like I give an example. The name of the variable is name, and the content is how, for example. But me, I want to display like like variable command ls. The result of command ls.
Hi, do anybody understand question? I'm finding it difficult. Or is it the same thing we've been doing? Because if you want to display the result of a variable, basically the same steps we've been doing. I don't know if you. Or if there's anybody who understands the question better, you could ask. Mr. Olarewanju. Yes, you can go ahead. Mr. Olarewanju. I saw you were muted.
My question is, I noticed in the first execution, so when we used food as an example, so in the curly braces, I've said that used only single brackets, the open and the closed bracket. But in the other example, when we like to use 5 power 3, double the curly brace. So my question now is it important that used a particular order, or you can either use the single or double column. So that's what I'm asking.
A fine question. Shall we answer this question by trying to see the example? I think the best way would be to pretty much see the result it will display. So we have a problem on our hands now. Let me just confirm. You see, we have a problem. When we execute it, it says first times second, command not found. Right? So it was apparently not understanding this. And the reason could be simple. For example, let me do this now. Let me go ahead and do this. Let's see what we get. Command not found also. Now let me go ahead and do this. And right, let's see what we get. The result of 5 power 3 is 5. So let me go ahead and do this now. Times and write second up there. We have an error here that says bad substitution. I try to look for all other ways, all other alternatives to trying to evade writing 2 brackets, and it understands what I was trying to do, but it's telling me this is a bad substitution. This, since I'm putting 2 variables, it's actually a bad way to do. Shell is definitely not agreeing with what I'm trying to do. So, of course, the only way now that has worked so far is this. Let's try that again. And let's go. So, I don't know if it's clear. I don't know if the little experiment I did with the example did answer your question.
Yeah, I did understood. Thank you. And one more thing. The bracket. Can we use anyone?
The what?
The bracket. Can we use anyone?
What's gravity? So sorry, I
bracket.
Okay.
Let me try to type it like.
Okay, I get the brackets, the normal brackets, the curly braces. No, like we clearly saw here, it understood what I was trying to do, but it did tell me bad substitution. So wait, let me do this now. So we see it's clear. I may just be wrong after all. So let's try to make it double curly braces now, sides, and see if shell is going to allow us bad substitution. You see the error we get. Do you see the error we got?
Yes, yes.
Obviously, it was the same error I got when I did it just once, but obviously it understood what I was trying to do, but doesn't like it. So they're just commands we get to follow and get the work done. Somebody is thinking somewhere, how do you want me to memorize all of this? Of course, you're not going to memorize it. I don't even try to memorize it. I just want to know it once. And anytime I know it, I can go back to what I know before. We have some questions about pipes. Piping is used to combine functions, and it's, yeah, really one of the difficult topics in shell. It's a form of redirection, shell redirection, piping, to combine concepts. So hey, Mr. Henry, you wanted to say something. Can you use the
Wait,
okay?
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I think the question the other lady was asking was about redirection, how to display the result of a command in another file. I think
How to display the result?
the result is in another file.
Oh wow, how to display the result of a
Yeah,
command? How to
yes.
display
How far?
the results of a command
Command.
in
Yeah.
another file in Linux,
Yeah.
right? We're dealing with Linux.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yes, exactly.
All right.
Right? Is it right?
Yes. She confirmed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at what we have
Thank
here on
you.
Google. An article from February 20 talked about it. Same question, they talk about it. So let's try to see the best answer to that. So syntax to save the output of a file, saving the dates command output to a file called output text. Okay, so this is the command dates being saved to another file called output.txt. I don't know if that answered your question. Look very easy, by the way. And then we get some kind of complicated commands here. And we have an explanation for what just happened here. Running Linux command and saving the output to a file. So this is running the command, and then the whatever is the output, saving it to a file. So we have something here. It says if it doesn't exist, if this file doesn't exist, it would create it. And if something is inside, it would overwrite it. And then the command of this now to list all that's in the bin folder would be saved in this thing called file. I don't know if this explanation seems very straightforward from this site. I don't know if it answered your question.
No,
So,
not really answer you want to, but
so for example, let's
is
try
that
this. Oh, we're still saying something. For example, let's try this now. Um, how do we paste in Ubuntu? How do I paste? I have no idea how to. I get a series of very annoying messages. So let me copy this. Let me see some of my options. All right. So I'll be able to paste now. And in reality, I don't like this. So let me just do variable. Okay, no such file or directory. But we clearly have something called bin already. So let me VI into file.list. Text. Hey, something just happened like magic. It's not actually. The command we ran listed all the results in a folder called bin, and we asked it that this result it wants to give us, it should save it in another file called file.list.test. That's what we pretty much did. Almost as straightforward as it is being said here. So this was the command we ran. List all. So if I remove this all, list in long format, not all, list in long. So if I don't want it to list in long format, just list, I could do this ls. Can I try something with one of my files? Okay, we have tmp. So obviously all those default folders can be accessed through this. And rather than having file list.txt, can I just change it to test.txt? List out something. Let me VI into test.txt, and I have nothing because in reality it didn't list anything for me. Quite understandably, I did not list it in its long format. So, or all. So I'm going to do LA this time. And I can now see all the whole long formats. Obviously, there's nothing even in my folder there, except when it was created, some of these weird stuffs that of course have meaning. So I don't know. You said that didn't answer your question. Is the question coming from a tax? Is the question coming from a tax? Because for me, this was clear. So if this didn't answer the question, I want to know if the question was coming from a tax.
Clear.
You said?
What you explain is clear.
Okay.
What you explain is clear. I want really, I don't know if not explaining well myself. I want really to display, for example, something in the chat. The parent directory after use echo in a batch file, for example.
If your question
I can
coming
say
from a
echo
tax,
my parents directory is I display the answer for command cd 2.2.
is your question coming from a tax? A tax on your current project? Is that where your question is coming from?
No, it's coming from your explication. Sorry.
Oh, wow. If it was from a task, I wanted to ask you to send me as a message. Or if you can type it out here as a message. Since I'm having problem even
Okay.
with hearing, yes, your network is kind of breaking. Mr. Kevin says, how did I display those options? Using the LA, this is to list long and to list all, you know, and all of that. So let me go a little about, yeah, Mr. Kelvin, I've been able to paste. You know, I'm not using the regular, not sandbox, so AV didn't work, but I enabled the settings to be able to paste on the terminal. Let me explain a little about piping shell or Unix code. It has to do with redirection, so I'm sure you are going to encounter it there. The standard output of a command, piping just helps you to connect it with the standard input of another command. Pretty much long explanation, but it's able to connect two different commands that should not be related. It's able to connect them together. For example, if you should list all the files and directories you have currently and give it as an input to more command, you can do it by piping. So the more is a command on its own, if I'm correct. So if I do more, that's a command, you know, that, and it's actually a bad usage. But you know, if you just type random things, it will tell you, going to give us one cryptic message now, command not found yet. But when we use more, it did say we should type more help. So more is actually a command, and if we do the more dash help, we would be able to get the usage of more. Oh, I did not type it well, so let me see how they did it. More, we have to put a space and then help. Okay, so display help, we have count logical, suppress pause, do not scroll, do not squeeze. You can see a lot of whole commands. The more, right? So more is a command on its own. But if I want to list out what I have here now, and I do ls dash l, now this is going to list it in a long format for me, everything I have here. But when I want to pipe or join two things that do not concern each other clearly, I'm going to use this command here. That's this. What's the code? Forgotten. I have no idea what this thing is called. Can someone help me? I don't want to Google it. I have a question.
Pipe. You're piping.
Piping. Thank you.
It means you're piping.
That this, in its literal sense, is this a pipe command? Is this a pipe option? Like where forward slash, backward slash. This one is pipe, right? That's what I was asking. Yeah, I don't know if it's just slash or something. But basically, this command now joins this small and this LA. So when we run enter, we should have some things that should not exactly be an error for us. All right. Yes, here we go. We now have. Now, if you see, there's a major difference between what we had before. Our files that were executed showed displayed as executed here. But in this case, they didn't. So we have test 1, test 3, test 2. Here, they did not exactly display that way. We have their permissions here and all of that. But this command that showed me bad usage now is able to work with these ones. So that's what piping did now with our more command. So it takes the output of all. Basically, what the more did was take the output of this ls-l and displayed give it to more now as an input. So we are asked to use other examples here, like using more to eventually display. So let me go ahead and try to run the example. And oops, I was trying to pipe to temp command. Oh, it clearly could not even access it from where we are variables. All right. So once again, very complicated, but it just joins one thing that should not have any business with the other and try to join them together. How exactly they work, I have no idea. But of course, I learned it this that it joins two things that have no business together and tries to see how they can work together by collecting from here and giving to here. How exactly their chain work, something I'll pretty much do research on when I'm done with Python, maybe JavaScript. Is this session recorded? Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah, Mr. Kelvin, sorry about your hand. Please go on. Hello, Mr. Kelvin, are you here? All right. Seems clearly is here. For most of those things in the advanced tasks, as you know, if you know me, and if you checked my video, I think I can remove all the files that are not um all the files that are clearly not part of our original context. I'm having a hard time. I wanted to remove all the files that are not executed, but I clearly cannot remember how to do that. So let me just do it the wrong way. All right. Work, right? Let me list out what I have. Correct. It did work. Yeah. My brain did not fail me on that one. I think there was a shorter way to ask it. I clearly forgot about that. So we're talking about variables and one way we could use them, right? And we just played variables and pretty much did static things with variables. What we didn't really bring out the beauty of variables. Didn't make it look anyhow nicer. So let's try to make variables actually give a beauty, quotes, make it useful. Because what we've been doing with test 1, test 2, test 3 doesn't really bring out why I should be interested in learning it. So let's now do something like input and output. I don't know if piping is connected to this, but I know variables really make sense when getting input from. So let's say we want to read an input from the user now. How are we going to read from the user? Now there are a couple of ways we can do this. The first one is this one that I've actually just gotten here. So let me create something called test 4 and in here paste it. Right, so what's this? We have read here, which is a keyword if we want shell to read something. This -p is another keyword meaning prompt. So this one prompts the user, asks the user a question. And in this case, the question is enter your name. It's asking the user to do something, which is enter his name why we gave a space here is just so that it could look beautiful in the eyes. And then we have something called name written in all capital letters. And when you have something like this, you can already tell this name is a variable. Right. So let's go ahead and make meaning out of this. First, I should be doing good practice, which is in bash. Come down now and echo. So I should display the result of whatever I was trying to do. And say your name is, can just put the name in a variable and save it this way. So far, I hope you understood what I just did here. This read is a keyword from the that tells shell to read something. Of course, it would only take this serious when we make this executable and actually run it. So if you're just writing normal read, there's no keyword there. This dash p will prompt the user, and this is the message we want to prompt the user for. We store it in this variable. Now let's see how variables can make sense to us. So let's do chmod u plus x star. Go ahead now and tests for. Enter your name. All right, so just in case you wondered what we did so far, so once you just hit enter now, it's prompting me, it's telling me to do something. You can see the cursor now moving, blinking. Enter your name. So let me go ahead and enter my name, Bwave, and it prints out your name is Bwave. Now the whole idea of variables making sense, right? Enter your name is Bwave. This is the same shell that so far, for some of us like me, I've only used it to do simple things like ls, cd, mkdir arrow, touch, and then recently we just started executing files. But the same shell is now prompting us to enter our name, and once we print out our name, it has enough wisdom to be able to store that name and return it for us and say your name is Bwave. Quite nice from the shell there. And honestly, this is one of the beauties of using variables. Mr. Anoke, you were unmuted. By default, everyone muted is supposed to be able to unmute by themselves. And I cannot unmute you. So that's pretty much the work of you. Like, I can't unmute someone. I can only mute the person. And once I mute you, you can mute yourself back as always. Please. Just try to mute yourself. It should work. So this is, yeah, this is something we did with input in less than 2 days, because today is actually gone, so we just have tomorrow, and on Thursday we'll be doing something similar, or we'll start the series of something similar. I'm not sure it's on Thursday where you're going to prompt to ask for users input, but to do something like this, I'll just go ahead and do a little more. Here we got only so that you see the beauty of using shell and how easy shell is. So in test 4, we wrote only Bwave. So let's say Bwave ICT, and you can see just print out Bwave ICT. Like, so nice. If I just go ahead to do it again and I said I don't know, honestly, so I just want to type some random nonsense. It says what's your name, enter your name, and I said my name is I don't know, honestly. I hit enter and it just says your name is I don't know. That's fine. This thing has a lot of wisdom with that. There are other ways we can also do this. For example, if I don't want to use this read and prompts and all of that, if it's looking so complex already, there is a way I can do this. So let me go ahead and create test 5, and this is another way I can do it. So I can just echo, please enter your name, and then read first name, last name. And lastly, I want to echo out the result. So how do I echo out the result? I go and type echo, your names are first name and last name. So, without using the read and the prompts like we did here, we can do it this way. Of course, you're still going to use the read. So it's going to store the results of your first name and last name in this variable. And your echo is going to, your names are first name, last name. So it's going to store them in different variables. Your first name first and your last name last. So let's try this now. As always, want to ensure good practice and do what's required of us. So hash slash bin and then bash. All right. And test 5. Please enter your full name. And now you can see a big difference between test 4 and test 5. Test 4 says enter your name, and in this line I had to input my name, Bwave ICT. But in test 5, you can see that it came down to our next line to ask me to input my full name. So anything that I'm imputing now, Bwave ICT, you can see it's in the next line, but this one, same line. That was because of the read function that we did put in the next line. So let me hit enter now. It says your names are Bwave ICT. Store the Bwave variable in first name and the ICT variable in last name. But in this case, you may be wondering what's the difference. In this case, it stored Bwave ICT in the first name variable only. And so if you want to access last name later on, you would see that it will return an error. But in this case, it stored ICT last name. So this is how wise variables could become, or how useful they could become just now. Now, these things we've done in Shell now, I hope they were pretty much simple. Like you really understood them. So let me just go ahead to do the test 5. So this was our lines, all our lines. We had 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, and 4 line, which were pretty much simple. If I want to remove all the spaces from this line, it will make it a little jam-packed, but that you can just see how easy the lines were. You know, all we did to store first name and last name was line 1, line 2, line 3. Now we can go ahead and remove this, as I've said before, and doesn't necessarily mean your program would crash. So let me go ahead and test this. Bwave ICT. Your names are Bwave ICT. So our program doesn't crash. In reality, we just needed 3 lines to be able to print out all of this. But there's something that happened when we did the bin bash. You can see how even our VI is reading our scripts in this case now. So bin slash bash, and you can see even how our VI is reading it. It's reading it as a bash file, as something really important, just the way it should go ahead to read it. So that's what this whole bash does. It tells the shell, tells whatever it's executing it, that look, these are not just normal text files. They should be interpreted with the bash command. When you make your file executable and run it on the shell, though, it does the same thing. So this thing now that we use 3 or 4 lines to write, let's do a little comparison with what you should be saying in a few days from now. Just a sneak peek to what you should do. To do the same thing we just did now, To do the same thing we just did now, it will now be something like this. It will, all our code done crash. Waiting be this. I'm going to exit from VI without saving. How do we do that? Okay, so I'm going to exit from VI without saving. Oops, obviously it's not allowing me to do that. How do I undo what I've done in VI? What's the command to undo again? What's the command to undo? Let me go and check. Command to undo in VI.
Control U, I think.
Control U.
You. I think it's you.
Control U.
Do we really have controls in VI? Hey.
I think it's you.
Thank you.
Control U, yes.
Column U worked for me. Thank you. Obviously, I've even forgotten. I would have gone to Google just now. And I'm back to this place. I don't want VI to repeat what it did. So I'm going to write another file, create another file to do what, and I'm going to call it compare 5. So the same thing we did in, let me go ahead and all right, so the same thing we did there in 5, like test 5 with shell. Look at how to do it using C. Let's count how many lines we have. We have 1 line, we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, we have 5, we have 6, we have 7, we have 8, we have 9, and we have 10. Of course, I could see we have 10 lines from here. I just wanted to elaborate. 10 lines. Now, let's go back to where we are coming from. Precisely. Test 5. We had 3 lines. If I want to add the bin bash, it will make it 4 lines. The other one, we had 10 lines. One big difference is that in this test 5, I'm removing the bin bash and putting it for fun. If you do it in this C code, this compare 5, if you remove any single one of these things that are here, any one, nothing would work. So here is shell that difficult, like compared to what's in front of us. To your questions to answer, of course, shell has its own difficult parts, but just saying these cryptic looking things, we're already using and, we are using percent, we are using d, we are using s, we are using square brackets, we are using normal brackets, we are using curly braces just to print out something. We are even using this semicolon, we are using commas, we are using quotation just to print out. And then we could also add something called /n somewhere. Makes it look really cryptic. At the end of the day, I would even prefer using shell to ask the user for an input or something. So shell, I think it's time to give shell the respect that it deserves. Now shell, I don't know, shell operates more like a programming language because it could do a lot of things. Shell can do for loops, something you'll be learning in C. Loops may look strange now, especially if you've not heard it before, but don't worry, it's pretty easy or difficult, but shell can do it. Now you have something called an if statement, which is a very wise thing. Like really, it checks for some values. It's like a condition, it's passing a condition. For example, an example of an if statement is, if Mr. Kelvin raises up his hand, then I should call him. That's an if. The condition. I'm going to call him if he raises up his hand. Of course, his hand has been raised up, but I don't know why Network has decided to show everybody here violent. Shell can do that. An if statement. Quite surprising, right? The first time I saw it, I was very, very surprised. But it can do it. It could also go ahead to do for loops. So let's do text 6 now to check an if statement in shell. I want to do my bin bash, so bin bash. I'm having enough freedom to play around with this bin bash because it's not really in the ALS tags. But if it was in the ALS tags, of course, I'll put it there, because if you remove it, the checker is going to fail for not following the requirements. So how do we use an if statement? I said in C, in shell. So we can do it also using variables. That's why variables very, very important. Expansions pretty much going a little far. Still important, but pretty going a little far. What is this? Waiting be this. Let me try to fix this now. The idea is giving showing me violence. So copy here. You know why someone told me something, how to use Windows to check out all the things I've copied to be able to pick. If the person in this is in this meeting, shout out to you. Thank you so much for that fine suggestion. I tried it in the afternoon and well. Told me on YouTube, by the way. And I so much appreciate your comment on it. So let's look at what we've done so far. Like this cryptic message I've posted. I want to do an if statement in shell. So how do I do it? First, this is a variable called name, and this name has Bwave. Now I have some kind of a condition, an if statement. The way to do it is to put these square brackets, and inside there we are going to say if our variable name is equal to Bwave, then we are going to echo Bwave. This here completes our if statement for us. Just to make it clear, let me remove it. Let's not be as if what's this that is here just copied and paste. So let's do it from scratch now. Name equal to what name are we using here? I don't know if she's here, but we are going to use Debbie. Okay, so let's use this name now, Debbie. And now we are going to come to our if statements. If, just the way it is, a square bracket, space, now this. So put our $sign, right? If name, am I missing something? Did I put the $sign? Yeah, I'm not supposed to. If name is equal to, now I'm not going to use 2 equal to, just 1 is okay. If name is equal to Bwave, it's going to fulfill some kind of condition for me, and that is the then here. Then going to go ahead to, I forgot that just now. Thank you. Then we are going to echo some things here, and I could say welcome Deb, right? Yes. And then I exit this with PI, lastly. FI, I know this is the strangest part of this. That's how you exit everything. FI. So would this work? I'm someone who believes in trying it. If you want to know if it will work, just try it. So let's go ahead to try it, although I think it won't work. But let's try it and also see the message it would give us. Yeah, it is 6. So I could do /. And nothing happened, obviously. Nothing happened. So it clearly didn't work. But it didn't give me an error. So what was exactly wrong? So let's go back and review our code. And we are supposed to, now we miss two things. First is a semicolon here. So this starts introducing us to the words of semicolon, something that's very common in C. And if you miss it, your code will not work, just the way this my shell script didn't work. Then in the name, we put the $ in between the variable name, and you can see it's even changed. So this should work. And I'll come here now. There's something called good practice and all of that. So to give some gap here before going ahead to print out it's just good practice to make your code fine and much more readable. Doesn't mean anything. Now let's try to run this again, and it says welcome Debbie. So the if statement just happened, and although it was static, the name is equal to Debbie, and then we said if the name, this name here, is equal to Debbie, echo or print out this one, and it did just that. So if I made a mistake like I was doing that time before I was corrected, and remove this E and go ahead to do this. So okay, and try to run it again. You can see it doesn't give me anything. It just moves on with its life because that if statement is not correct, so it doesn't do anything. But now it works fine. Welcome Debbie. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. All we've been able to do so far is using just variables. It's the part of shell that I like most, because even our for loop, our while loop, every other thing we are going to do, shell has to do with variables. And honestly, it's nice. We could take this one step further. I know some of you might have already spotted the take here. So if I hit this test 6 now, it's telling me welcome Debbie. But in a case where not correct, it's not correct, so I mistake the spelling or I put something like Bwave or something. What do you think I'm doing wrong that I probably should have fixed here to make what I'm doing better? No, I made a mistake, the name is not correct, and anytime I hit enter, it just moves on, like it doesn't even answer me. What do you think can make our code better? What do you think? Just by guessing. I made a mistake with since I've been doing if the name, the variable name corresponds with Debbie, then go ahead to print welcome Debbie. But in this case, clearly made a mistake. Variable name does not correspond with Debbie, and my code is just running. It's not telling me if I'm correct, it's not telling me if I'm wrong. Just moving. What do you think could have changed? Let's see how variables help us do. Okay, I don't know if you're thinking about something like if the name does not correspond with Debbie, rather than just moving ahead, why not tell us something like, hey, doesn't correspond? Does that make sense? Definitely. Like, instead of when we hit this execute our command, it just moves on. Why not tell us, hey, it's not correct, so that we know where we have our faults? So that brings us to something called an else statement. That brings us to something called an else statement. So we could come here to say then, and come here now to write else echo sorry, wrong name and end it here. Now let's see how smart our code can become. It says sorry, wrong name. So rather than just going out to print, to just display nothing at all, it's telling us a wrong name, and you can clearly see why it's a wrong name, because this name here doesn't match the name we have in. And so if I go back and I make our name here Debbie, I save and quit this, I run it again, gives me the first answer. Welcome, Debbie. Is it clear? Any questions from here? First. Any questions from here first? I hope you can even hear me very I hope you can hear me very well.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, so clearly no questions. Now let's go ahead and make our shell a little more wise in terms of variables. I'm trying to localize this. What's the purpose of the PI? Without the PI, you can't basically exit your code successfully. It would always give you an error. The PI just like exits for you, tells you that you're done, tells it to you. Someone was asking a question about tax 7 in shell redirection. Okay, that is not even project here. So if we have time, we'll probably go back to. I don't even have the questions to tax 7 in shell redirection. So maybe you can copy and paste the questions here, and I'll look into it to try to see how you can get the answers. Yes, Mr. Kelvin.
Okay, sorry, I'm not able to
Yeah, we can hear you.
okay. One is, the last school, I don't think it's running well. Each technique,
Okay.
I don't think it's running well. That's one. Two, the question I had in my mind, when I started raising my hand, when you use, and the first, that first declaration, the first one, when we compared or we multiplied, we did the proper multiplication.
Yes.
And then we have two variables, and then in your list you use double brackets. To me, the explanation, I didn't understand it well. Are you saying the two brackets, was it because of the two variables? That's difference in the two brackets. Or that's just the syntax? Sorry.
Yeah, from all the tests we performed, it's clear that it's because of the two variables. I don't know if we perform. I don't know if we have 3, we'll use 3 or so on, but we can go ahead and test that to be very sure. Then the last if statement. So what do you identify as the problem with our if statement?
Truly, I can't tell you, I can't point out the error here because I don't know it. But I noticed that it's not running well because even when we change the name, when we say if the name is, we have made a mistake in the name,
Yeah.
it still told us welcome. Right? Because I have expected the second echo to display.
No, it didn't. It's actually running very well.
So that,
it's okay. So let's make a deliberate mistake now. So you see the mistake, right? You've seen the mistake with the name here, right? All right. So let's go ahead and compile this just for you now. And what did it print out for us?
Okay.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
yeah. So it's working very well. Okay. So let's
Okay, thank you.
yeah. Mr. Ibrahim, I see you. We'll get to your question shortly. But before that, let's do something now. You know, I would always want to compare, right? If else in shell. So let's do something now. You know, from last week up until the end of this month, or I think even till January, because I don't know when there would be that break, and that break you're also going to get the break. So till January, when the probation ends, you're on a probation now, 80%. Lesser than 80% would out. Those greater than 80%. So anybody greater than 79% precisely, congratulations. But anybody lesser than 80% out. If you were to implement this now, how would you do that using shell? Maybe not the code, but if you were to implement this, like what would be your logic, the logic to implement it from all what we've discussed? So,
Please, I didn't get the question, please.
okay, I said now you know you already, we've been from now on till I think January, we're on an 80% probation. You are on an 80% probation. So if you were to implement something now using what we've talked about with variables in shell to determine if someone is successfully out of the probation period or if someone failed the probation period, how do you do that? What logic can you use? If everybody here can use the in-call message to write out their logic, brilliance. Because in reality, what you are going to be doing in a few days' time. So, yeah, Chika, please tell us.
Okay. If I'm going to get an input, definitely there's going to be a variable. I will define a variable like variable score as a variable. Then I'll use the if statement that if score is less, if it's greater than if score is greater than 80 or greater, if score is greater or equal to 80, then it should print out or echo like the student will move on. Else, if it's um if score else, that means if it's not up to 80, then the student will not move on. That is my conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Exactly. So, how can we do that now? Like, that's exactly the logic. Or any other person that feels maybe there was some things that could have been added or removed to what she just said, please feel free to go ahead. Yes, Mr. Olari, one.
Yeah, I want to it as you can make our code a by saying score is equal to pass. So then we go on and say pass should also be equal to or greater than 80%.
Yes.
So then we move on and say if a student's score is equal to or greater than 80%, then echo you are qualified. So then we now come to the else statement by also indicating that score is also equal to less than 80%. Then give it this a conditional else statement that if score also if score also is less than 80%, it should print you are disqualified. So I don't know if you are getting it or not.
Me and you know that you got it. You're also correct. Thank you so much. You know, there's just this thing that when you do something correctly,
Wow.
even you go no say I'm correct. Even you, like we all know now. You say you know say get out. In the same way too, when you do you understand, you say you know say more today or no enter. Oh. So
It's just an attempt.
so you're correct. Now let's go ahead and implement that now. So first line bin bash. And so what can we do here? We first create a variable called score and set it equal to 80. So there are a couple of ways to do this now. But let's create a variable called score and set it equals to 80. Now there should be an if statement that says forgot something just now, and this would have given me a big problem here. My bin bash, something was wrong. Have given me a big problem if I had gone to test that. Now if score is what's our variable? Score, right? If score is equal to if score is equal to 80, if score is equal to 80, we want to do then want to echo some kind of text. Echo. So we can say congratulations. And if it's not, else we can echo sorry. You know that sorry the Cooper's voice that says sorry, and we can echo something like that and end everything with fi and basically print out. So we can say yeah, show you the whining. We can do test 7 dot slash and it's print out congratulations. Now that's the whole idea of this, but as some people would have already started imagining, this doesn't look sharp. So let's say we have 7C. So let's see what it will print out. It says sorry. Hopefully everybody here will not be part of the people saying sorry. Once the 1 month probation is over, we'll all be telling you congratulations. Hopefully. And it's very easy to work towards. Most of you, if you check your average now, it's already above 80. So it's just a matter of you maintaining it. So we have 70, sorry, 80, congratulations. But what could be the problem here? What could be the problem? What could be the problem? There's a problem we have. Yeah, Mr. Ade. Yes, please ask.
No, I said I don't get the problem you're asking, the question you're asking.
Okay, the question.
No,
Question. The last question I just asked is this works out for us. If I have 80 now, if I save this and quit, once I quit this now and I go ahead to execute it, it tells me congratulations, which is exactly what I'm looking for. If I update this value here and write 70, so if someone gets 79, there's nothing we can do to help that person. It will tell the person sorry. No. So it works out fine, like very well. Because if you get 79, it tells you sorry. If you get 8, congratulations. But we have a problem here. What is the problem? That's the question.
double equal sign.
I honestly don't know what the problem is, but I'm thinking you can help me figure it out.
It's supposed to be a single equal sign, but you have double. Okay.
Okay, it's supposed to be a single equal sign, but we have double. But that's not really affecting our code because the results. Any angle you look at it.
What are the question? Sir?
Any angle you decide to look at it
That
from.
should give us an opportunity to input our scope.
Alright, that's
Because-
fine.
Because we've indicated 80 in our code. What if the person now scores above 80? What would be the output?
Fine. What if the person scores above 8? Thank you. A problem. Any other problem you can think of here?
Also, what if the person scores lower than 79?
Any other thing lower than 79 should print out. So let's say the person decides not to do any project in ALX and scores 03. Let's try to see now. It says sorry. Sorry, person is out. So that doesn't seem like a problem to me. So let's work with this one now that we've seen. What if the person scored 90? This person is so brilliant, like you are now. And the person got 150. Let's see where our code could probably have gone wrong. Can you see what we've coded? We have someone who have scored 150 and our code is printing sorry for that person. I guess the person scored way too
So
high.
maybe instead of equal to 80, write equal to or greater than 80.
Fine. Great. So that's a very good option. Now, you could go. Now, how do we go about this? By default, you will not know it, but this is it. GE. So when you do GE, we can now write this. This means equal to or greater than this certain number. If we go ahead now, hey, can someone kindly mute it? we go ahead now to print 150 or 80, we have congratulations. Let's go and test our code if it works very well now. Or if we would still have a problem, let's try the 150 again. And let's go. It prints sorry, oh, sorry, oh. We still have the same problem. We still have the same problem. Yeah.
I think it's in the assignment statement that we score.
Yeah.
Because with our score, so it's there that we should assign the number being greater than 8, equals or greater than 8. In the assignment statement.
Come again.
In our variable score.
Yeah.
That's where I think we should implement that rule, that the number should be greater than or equals to 8.
Fine, but that's what I just did. Then I came here to change the value nicely. And
no, I said in this, I mean in the score.
In here.
This one is an input.
Yeah, it's a variable, yes.
We should impute if the score is greater than here.
Yes, I want to it.
Can we really do that with a variable? Remember what the definition of a variable is. It takes in an input and a name. So anything I put here equal to or greater than would just be another input. So this is where our condition lies. Now there's something very wrong I'm doing here that would make, if I run this code, it won't work. We've already set our score here to 80. If you remember, our score is already at 80. And then we are coming here to try to modify and put 150. Obviously, that's not our business anymore. We'll still keep it at the equal to or greater than 80, right? So for us to know if this code is working, it's not there again. We'll know if this code is working here. But it's a little difficult now since the user cannot even give an input. So that's our next big problem now. The user cannot give us his inputs. The user cannot clearly give us. So it's anything we put here now that we just take for its face value. So if I write 70 or if I write 60 or any other thing I write, it just doesn't, the face value, anything I write here now is what will go and display, and it doesn't make. So I have to allow the user to give an input, right? I have to allow the user to be able to tell us his score. Then I will determine with my code if the person passed or not, rather than me just defining it here and leaving it to whatever I type to determine if the person passed. You see that as a problem. So next question is, how do we put our input in this score variable now, and then come to check for the inputs and then determine if the person passed or not? I've already said that the greater than or equal to sign is the -GE. So what do we do now? We can do a couple of things. I'll let you think about what to do now. So you could screenshot this page on your system, or probably just plan ahead to, hey, what did I do? Could screenshot this page on your system and start thinking about what to do. But while I will implement this, I'm going to implement it using another example, an example I've always wanted to use. So this is quite an incomplete code, and I'm going to name it something that shows that this is an incomplete. And I'm going to put it test 7 incomplete, right? And when I list out what I have test 7 incomplete. I don't have test 7 again. Okay, so I'm going to leave it like this. And I'm going to create a test 8 file. Why did I leave 7 incomplete? I want you to think about what to do there to pretty much solve it. You know, the best way to learn is to actually try to tax yourself. So that would be an interesting challenge. But this example does exactly the same thing as I did in the text 7. So why I leave you to try to see how to implement that, this example would come in handy. Going to be our final example for the day or the night. Bin bash, and can go ahead. Should it be in a variable or something? Okay, that thing you were saying that I did explain, that it makes no sense for it to be in a variable. But for our final example, which would help you solve it, different ways you could solve that. I'm going to ask this question lastly. Are you a beginner in programming? Something that should determine if you actually need either a video or a class, like one-on-one special kind of dedicated class, or maybe you don't need anything to actually succeed program. Something that is able to evaluate that. Let's try to implement that. So we cannot implement that by being static. So the first thing we are going to do is ask the user a question and then get the answer. So how are we going to do that? Let's get into the video. Want to ask the user a question by using these words echo, and then inside here are the words. So the question I'm asking is, are you a beginner in programming? A pretty much simple and straightforward question. So once this question comes, we any answer you input or the user inputs, it's going to store it in this variable called answer. And we could start making our system start thinking. So what's the next step? We can say if answer is equal to yes, then it should do something for you. So if this person types, I'm a beginner in programming, then a certain condition field. So let's see how we implement that. So if answer is equal to yes, if the answer the user inputs is equal to yes, then want to go ahead to do some kind of things, like then want to echo out a message. So if this user is clearly a beginner, want to say Bwave class is for you. Please join. And what are other options the person could say? If you ask some people, are you a beginner? They will tell you no. Then you ask them, are you a pro? They're also going to tell you no. So they are somewhere in between. It happens a lot. Because you can't really call yourself a beginner at the end. You're not a pro. So some people have been learning for like 5-6 months. They've been doing a lot of HTML, CSS before now, but it's not working. It's not just working. So how can we help those? We could use the nesting that says else if. Now that's introducing another statement to us that we did not discuss in our last challenge, which I left uncompleted. We could say elif here, meaning else if the answer from the user is equal to maybe, then want to do some kind of things, which is print out another message and says Bwave videos would be helpful. So this person is not really a beginner, At the same time, it's not a pro yet. I want to tell this person that Bwave videos should be helpful. Check, and a little more message, check out his YouTube channel. And the rest set of people, they are not beginners, and they are not in any form of doubt. They know that they are not beginners. So, and they are not doubting. So it leaves us with one set of people. Either the people that are complete beginners, people that are not beginners at all, and the people that are somewhere in between. We've handled the case for complete beginners. We've handled the case for somewhere in between. Time to handle the case for people that are not beginners at all. No need to use another else. We just want to use an else statement to print out something. And for those people, we'll not let them go free. Subscribe to Bwave YouTube channel, and let's collaborate on Python projects. So those kind of people that are not beginners, they are very clear that they are not. They are not also in doubt. Maybe I'm still a beginner, maybe I'm an advanced, I'm somewhere in between. They don't have any form of doubt. We just tell them, okay, since you're sure you're not a beginner, you're not somewhere in between, it means you're a pro. The next thing is let's collaborate Python project. If you're interested, hit me up after now and let's do such collaboration. So I have one crazy project I want to do. But very crazy that I actually need to collaborate with someone. So for those people who print out this message and say subscribe to Bwave YouTube channel and let's collaborate on Python projects, we end our print statement with FI. And is this going to work? Let's review what we've done. First of all, we get the inputs from the user, and then we read the inputs and store it in a variable called answer. Now, if our variable answer has the input of yes, then we want to echo this message, Bwave classes for. Else, if the answer has a variable of maybe, I want to tell the person to check out Bwave video. Be helpful. So it goes to Bwave YouTube channel. And else, the person is not a beginner at all. The person is not in any doubts. I want to tell the person to do two things. First, let's collaborate on Python project. And second, the person should subscribe to Bwave YouTube channel. In any of these categories you fall in, let's see how we can help the user in any of the categories he falls in. So first thing I want to do is to make all my files executable, and there we go. And I can do this now and say test 8. Hello, are you a beginner in programming? And I say yes. All right, Bwave classes for you. Please join. So if you're a beginner in programming, you want to take this kind of seriously, you're already in the class and it's going to get a little more complicated. For the most part of ALX, I focused all my learning on C and now on Python. The reason is because these are really complicated, the real programming languages. So I know what it means when you say, I'm not getting it. Maybe through these classes, just like you are now, you can make things a little. I know some people are not beginners in programming. They've been doing this thing for a while, doing HTML, CSS, or even JavaScript. But we know they enter, so they are maybe. Let's see what we have for them. Bwave videos will be helpful. Check it out. I have a 10-part series videos that's going to come up now on C programming. They are not to treat ALX stats, but they will be very helpful if you're somebody that's still struggling with some of the basic concepts, and even up to pointers, they will be helpful. So for someone that says maybe, Bwave videos should be helpful. Check them out. And finally, we have the next set of people. Are you a beginner in programming? They say hell no. All right, so we have our last voice that says subscribe to Bwave YouTube channel and let's collaborate. Python project. So which group are you now? Beginner, intermediate, or advanced? One thing is clear, link up with me and I will team up with you very well. And that would be it for today. I hope you did enjoy a whole lot from this video, and if you benefited from it, please kindly subscribe to my channel, like this video, and drop a positive comment. If you also have questions, go ahead and ask me in the comment section. Until I see you next time, it's a goodbye from me.